My father was always a serious man, the kind who didn't give in to nonsense. But when he spoke of that woman, his eyes would change, becoming dark, filled with a fear I had never seen before. He used to say that, in the village where he grew up, everyone knew the story of the witch. She didn't wear a pointy hat or fly on a broomstick. It was worse. At night, whispers would run through the alleys, warning of a grotesque creature lurking in the dark, an indescribable horror, something that made even the bravest lock their doors and pray softly. They said she took the form of a monster, but not just any monster. This being was huge, covered in grotesque skin, with human eyes that stared at its victims with a disturbing intelligence. It wasn't just its appearance that froze the blood, but the way it moved. Too swift for something of that size, its shadows crawling through the streets like an entity lying in wait. Some who dared to challenge it disappeared, while others returned, but they were never the same. My father was a soldier, trained not to fear the unknown. But that night, when the horror left the realm of stories and became real, he understood that there are certain things you can't fight with courage. He saw the creature. Not in a nightmare, not in a daydream. It was right there, in front of him, its human eyes glowing in the darkness like embers of pure terror. He tried to step back, but something pulled him, not with claws but with a deep fear, a visceral terror that kept him from moving. And it was at that moment that he knew, this wasn't just a legend. The monster moved forward, and my father swore the ground trembled under its weight. The smell of something rotten and hot filled the air, like decaying flesh left out in the sun. He tried to raise his weapon, but his fingers shook in a way he had never experienced before. The thing didn't roar, didn't growl, it simply took a deep breath, and the sound of that breath was too human for a monster. This horror shouldn't exist, but there it was, coming from the shadows, moving as if it knew no one would dare face it. It was then that he saw the eyes. They weren't those of a beast, they weren't animalistic or empty, they were human. And that's what truly shattered any certainty he had left. Those eyes stared as if they knew something, as if they were mocking human frailty. The skin of the monster seemed hastily stitched together, a mix of flesh and darkness. When it moved, its muscles twisted in a wrong way, as though they didn't belong to it. The fear my father felt wasn't just from being attacked, but from something deeper, from being face to face with something that defied logic itself. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to control the terror. And when he opened them, the creature was gone. No sound of footsteps, no trace on the dirt floor. Nothing. But the air still felt heavy, impregnated with that nauseating smell. He didn't want to believe it, but he knew that monster hadn't simply disappeared. It was there, hiding somewhere, watching. The next day, the entire village was talking about what had happened. People woke up to dogs howling, children crying for no apparent reason, and the air felt thicker, laden with something invisible yet real. My father didn't say a word. He just observed, trying to find any sign that it had been a delusion, a trick of the night, a nightmare played by the darkness. But then he saw it. In the middle of the square, among the people talking about the fear of the previous night, there she was. The woman. She seemed harmless, small, even frail. But there was something off about her, something in the way she moved, as if she knew a secret no one else did. When she smiled, it was like time stopped for an instant. My father recognized those eyes. They were the same. The same eyes that had pierced his soul the night before, the same eyes that had shone in the darkness as the monster approached. It was impossible, but he knew. That woman wasn't ordinary. She was the thing that lurked in the night. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream for everyone to flee. But he just stood there, frozen, his heart pounding against his ribs. And then she winked at him, a simple gesture, almost playful. And that's when he knew it wasn't over. In fact, it might not have even truly begun. Have you ever wondered what you would do if you discovered that terror isn't just in nightmares, but walks among us? My father was never the same after that night. He left the village shortly after, but something followed him. Sometimes he would wake in the middle of the night, cold sweat on his skin, swearing he had heard that breath in the dark room. He told me this story in a quiet voice, as if afraid that something, or someone, might hear him. And the strangest thing? Years later, when I returned to that village, I heard whispers. They said a woman had lived there for a long time, since before the oldest people could remember. She never aged. Her gaze? Too human to be normal. Some claimed that at night, it was still possible to hear a monster walking in the shadows. Maybe it's just a story. Or maybe... Now tell me, have you ever felt like someone was watching you in the dark? Like something was there, waiting, silent? And what if I told you that sometimes, the true horror wears human skin and smiles at us as if it knows a secret? Tell me in the comments if you've ever felt that inexplicable chill. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to hear more stories like this one. But be careful, not every story ends when you think it does.